We are live. Welcome in, everybody. As you can see, Jeffrey not here again. I know you're gonna have to work past a little bit of disappointment, but he's gonna be back soon. I promise you, he's coming back from Canada. Is he in Canada? Something like that.
Canada, Montana, somewhere, somewhere by a body of water, trying to catch trout or something of that nature. You know, Jeffrey's in the woods somewhere, man, living out his
Exactly.
living his best life, my man.
No doubt. Well, listen, we've had a pretty good little week of news. Jacobe Ward, he committed to Auburn on July 6th. July 4th was Hollis Davidson, recommitted, decided to jump on back in the boat and reunite with Ryan G. Those two are pretty close. Other than that, I guess there hasn't been a whole lot of chatter. It's really quiet because, we're in dead period right now. For those who don't know, dead period means recruits cannot visit campus and coaches cannot go see recruits. Now they can talk on the phone, they can email, they can carrier pigeon, whatever they need to do as far as that goes. But no visits one way or the other. So it's dead period. Right. Things are going to stay pretty quiet. But this is usually the time of year, the month of July, is where you start getting all these commitments, flips, all of these things start happening. Auburn had a good week after what we considered not a great week, at least publicity-wise. Comes back, bounces back, has a good week. You get two guys in the boat that you really wanted, one that you lost and wanted desperately to get back. You did. And then one, Jacobe Ward, who is one of the top offensive linemen on the board and has been for a long time. So pretty good week for Auburn. I forgot to intro Alan Head. Zach McKinnell, who is in the front, is not in the back. We're going to have some callers. I'm sure Kevin's probably lined up. We got a lot of things to talk about. And listen, guys, you run the show. If you want to call in, you run the show. You bring us the questions. You are the one that figures out the topics on the show tonight. So definitely bring it in. Give us a good question. If you got something to say it. And then we'll respond to it, and we'll keep it rolling. So, Zach, do we have any callers on the line already?
Man, it's buzzing tonight. Already got 5 on the line.
Oh, but before we go to that, I do want to say this. I've been at the beach with my family all week since I think the 3rd, and we haven't done a POWQ silent question of the week in a while, and I wanted to bring this to y'all's attention, and we talked about it a little bit. I have never seen anybody, my wife and her family, they will literally in the drawer reach over the butter knife, grab a spoon, and this is what they use to spread mayonnaise or peanut butter or butter or anything. They use a spoon. They scoop it with the spoon, use the back of the spoon to put it on there. And I've never seen that in my life. It's the first for me. And I'm a knife guy, so I just want to know if there are any other spoon people out there for spreading. I mean, you will literally choose a spoon over a knife. I got to know, because it's driving me crazy. I have to know.
In full disclosure, everybody, in the pre-discussion before we went live, there's not one person on this panel that does not use a knife. I assure you that Jeffrey would say you're an idiot if you don't.
Yeah,
so
I think you would.
But let's get to those phones, Zach.
Yeah, let's go.
We got the leadoff hitter, as always. Kevin from Wilmer, you're live, man.
Kevin from Wilmer, Alabama.
What's up, Kevin? How are you tonight, man?
Fine. I have a feeling that Juju Lewis will commit to Auburn this coming week.
Whew. Ooh, a timeline. That's awesome. Well, you're not, I don't think you're, if he's going to make a decision, Kevin, it's probably going to be this week or the next week or two. I think before July is over for sure.
Kevin, if you hit on this one, I'm taking you to Vegas with me and we're playing craps, brother. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
And I think Taylor Cunningham will commit too.
All right, Kevin. So you're saying definitely if Julian Lewis jumps in the boat with Auburn, watch out. Here come the receivers, right? What
Kevin,
else you got for us, Kevin?
I think KJ Lacey might flip his commitment from Texas to Auburn.
Oh. Juju Lewis and KJ Lacey. Very good. All right. Tell us about Cam Coleman, Kevin.
Cam Coleman will score 35 touchdowns.
Lord have mercy.
If we don't take a break on these live shows, Cam Coleman is getting 50 next year.
Cam Coleman's watching. He's like, yeah, 35. That's what it is. You know?
I like it.
Is that Wanda?
And Perry Thompson will be behind him.
I like it. I like it a lot.
As always, man. Appreciate you, Kevin.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Hey, Wanda.
Hey, Wanda.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us again tonight. It is not a show without Kevin and Wanda. You guys have to come on like Bonnie and Clyde every week. It doesn't work if you don't, I promise you.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Kevin has been pretty consistent about he usually starts off with one of the recruits he wants in the class, and he says, this is going to be the next. He's been pretty good on that.
He honestly has.
It all started with Perry Thompson, DeMarcus Riddick, Cam Coleman, that whole group. And he's carried it into this class, and I'm very impressed.
To hit on one of Kevin's predictions, is there any way Auburn takes 2 quarterbacks in this class?
If one's a transfer, yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Depending on what happens at quarterback, I do think that Auburn's going to go to the transfer portal regardless. Even if they get Julian Lewis, I think they could.
No, I mean, does it change the options that you have in the portal? Yeah, I think that it absolutely changes the options. Does it change the need to have a bridge quarterback for both of your young quarterbacks that you'll have on the roster? Absolutely not. And so while it may change the conversation of what's available to you, I don't think it changes the need. And I'm with you, Cole. Like I am squarely in the camp now that they are going to go to the portal for a transfer quarterback, regardless of who they land in the high school class. It just probably changes the composition of what you're looking at.
Because you're probably not landing a Cam Ward type of transfer if you land Juju, but with anyone else, you might be able to land one of the top quarterbacks out of the portal.
Because I think it depends on the amount of resources you have available, right?
Yeah.
Like I think. Go ahead.
If they are able to get a Julian Lewis and a Cam Ward type, Auburn's got way more money than I thought they had.
No doubt about it. Yeah. Because if you're having that kind of a conversation, Yellowwood must have made a hell of a donation. Let's talk about it like that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Let's go here. 3365. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Bo from Moody. What's up, fellas?
What's up, Bo? How are you, man?
How y'all doing, man?
Very good, very good. What you got for us tonight?
Hey, I want to ask you a question. There's a quarterback out there called Faison Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Has Auburn looked at him?
I haven't heard his name much. I'm sure that I think they've offered him at some point. I don't know where he stands with Auburn or vice versa. So I haven't heard his name much. He's a
5-star.
Yes, he's very highly wanted, very highly recruited. I'm sure Auburn's probably going to be in it with him at some capacity. Now, we have not seen him on campus that I know of. So usually that almost eliminates a guy for me.
This is going to the Bammers, man. I mean, I'm sorry for what happened to Kyrie Jackson and them 2 other players. Got their family in prayer.
I think that's awesome, Bo. I appreciate you bringing that up. And that is obviously thoughts and prayers with Kyrie Jackson and his family and the other 2 players that were involved in that car accident. That was a truly tragic situation. Anytime a young man that's just on the precipice of his, adult life, no longer being on this earth. So again, Bo, I really appreciate you saying that.
Okay, I got one more thing. The running back situation. What's his name? Croma?
Yes, sir.
How are we looking with him?
Well, I think he is a very, very good candidate to end up at Big Cat Weekend on July 27th. And I think he is probably your number one running back right now. Now that you've got Alvin Henderson in the boat, and you can pretty much, I say, go all out for him. They like Shakai Mills-Knight, of course. They still like DeJuan Morris.
Yep.
But I think Uzman Chroma is the top guy for Auburn right now, and I think they've got a pretty realistic shot with Georgia and Florida State being the other two teams.
Agreed, Cole.
Let's see. 5072. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
This is Jim from Edgewater, Florida.
Was that Jimmy?
Jim, how you doing, man?
What's up,
How's
man?
it going, Jim?
Pretty good, pretty good.
What you got for us tonight?
I'm just curious about the quarterback situation as far as Walker White. What would y'all think? I know he probably isn't going to be second or third string, so he's going to probably redshirt. But in the Alabama State game, and maybe even in the New Mexico game, obviously if we get a big lead, what would you think about trying to get him experience, like for a half in each game, not just a drive? I mean, we already used him in one game for a drive. Just curious about that. The other thing I wanted to find out: do the current players go to Big Hat Weekend and help recruiting? I know, obviously all the recruits going to be there, but like such as Walker White, he did such a great job last year. Would he be there to say, well, hey, if we miss on Juju, we still got a great quarterback. It's going to be same as y'all because he's going to redshirt. What do y'all think about that?
Let's hit on Walker White first. Alan, what do you think about his question? Saying the Alabama and A&M game, the New Mexico game. Do you think it's smart to give him some snaps if Auburn gets up pretty big? What do you think?
In an ideal world, I do, Jim. I think it would be great to get him snaps. I also think it's hard. It's extremely hard to get 4 quarterback snaps. So if he is, it really depends on his placement coming out of fall camp, where he sits on the depth chart, right? Because if he's in the 3 spot, then there's a potential for him to get the opportunity to do that. If he's in the 4 spot, that's going to be really tough to get him a full half worth of exposure because you have 2 other quarterbacks that also need development. Hugh Freeze acknowledges that. And I think if you were to bypass 2 other guys just to give your freshmen some work, it might not necessarily sit well with them. And if you do have an injury, you need to make sure that those guys are ready to go. So I don't think he's going to bypass anybody in the rotation just because of the future of Walker White and the potential that he has. Walker White's going to have to go out there and earn his playing time, and how he performs in fall camp will kind of drive what he's looking like in those games.
Yeah. And even if Walker White does not become the backup quarterback in fall camp that's coming up here, it doesn't mean that he's not performing to his, ranking. That doesn't mean that. It means that he's only been there for one spring practice period. And if you think it's a hard transition for young guys going in, it's definitely hard for a quarterback. And he's not just going to jump up to the backup quarterback like that. Probably he could. He very well could. I think it's going to be Hank Brown. So if that's the case, you don't push Hank Brown aside if you have time. You want to get Hank Brown in there if he's going to be the quarterback, the backup quarterback, because he's got to have some reps.
Absolutely.
Game. So that's probably how that'll go.
He's got 2-3 series max of playing time, meaningful playing time in any kind of game at this point. And again, we're always trying to mitigate against injury. So if something were to happen to Peyton Thorne, you have to have that next guy ready to go. Regardless of what your future is, even if even if you're not completely sold on one of those 2 being the future, they have to be developed enough to be able to get you a split in the SEC, right? To be able to, at minimum, get you to 6-6 because of everything else that you have at stake. So that's kind of where it sits for me.
I would like to know this from both of y'all. Who do you think is going to be the backup quarterback? Now, we know what we've heard from spring, but we also know how much things change in fall camp. I mean, it really changes. Who do y'all think will win the backup quarterback job? Because that might actually be one of the biggest position battles on the team.
I honestly think it is, Zach. I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll provide some thoughts.
I still think it's probably going to be Hank. If I had to pick somebody, I think he looked the most consistent. And with the way he performed even in the bowl game, I think he's shown some flashes. I don't really know where Holden falls, man. We've seen some real lows when the lights are on him in his limited action. So I think especially when you look at Hank was the quarterback that Hugh recruited. You got to remember Holden came in under the last head coach. I think Hank's going to have the advantage there. So I would imagine that Hank's going to win that job for the number 2 quarterback spot.
I'm going to go with Holden.
Yeah.
I think it's either, it's game time at this point, right? If you're ever going to be the guy at Auburn, there has to be a sense of urgency. And I get the feeling that he's going to attack fall camp in that way. I think he realizes that his situation is precarious at best on the depth chart. And so if you have ambition of ever playing meaningful football outside of what you've done at Auburn to this point, now is the time, because you're setting everything up. What you do this fall and how you carry yourself and how you perform on the field when you have your opportunities and how you perform in fall camp is going to dictate whether or not Auburn's going into the transfer portal, right? Because if they feel good about Holden Geriner, they're probably not going to the transfer portal. If you don't like what you see, well, then that changes the ball game completely. So for that reason alone, I thought very highly of Holden coming out of high school. Do I think he's an absolute fit for what Hugh Freeze wants to do? I don't. But do I think he has enough arm talent to be successful in this scheme? I do. And so I'm going to make it an interesting podcast, go the other way on this one. I'm going to ride with Holden Geriner here, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
There's 2 types of people when it comes to Hank Brown. There's the ones that say, well, did you see what he did in the bowl game?
Right.
And then there's the other side that says it was garbage time. It doesn't matter. It was a non-important bowl game. Who cares? I'm somewhere in the middle of that. I do agree that it was, I wouldn't say garbage time exactly. I think they made a change at a time in the game when it was getting away from him, and then he sort of rallied it.
Yeah.
And I don't go as far to say as it doesn't matter. I'm not going to go as far to say that it's the most important thing in the world, as far as this quarterback race goes. Somewhere in the middle, though, I think it's impressive what he did, for sure.
There's no doubt about it. It's impressive. I mean, look, those were competitive reps against P5 players, regardless of their placement on the depth chart. That was a good football team in Maryland. I mean, are they the greatest team that you're ever going to play? Absolutely not. But those guys are competitive. Those guys wanted to win that football game. And Hank Brown looked like a gamer, right? Like he came in, regardless of what he'd done in practice to this point, and absolutely went out there with guys that he did not get a lot of reps with. Like Hank's not getting, as he's a scout team guy all year. It's not like he was getting reps with the ones, and that's who he was throwing to in that game. So I think you have to give him some credit and acknowledge the situation that he stepped into.
Definitely. Yeah.
So for me, that was the best showing Auburn's had with a backup quarterback in any kind of competitive reps or meaningful situation. Probably, God, man, going back to TJ Finley versus Georgia State. I think that's probably the last time you had a backup quarterback come in with any kind of meaningful playing time and look decent doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it's going to be interesting. That really is probably, to me, other than how defensive line shakes out, Cole, the biggest mystery going into fall camp, and probably one of the bigger battles, is who's going to be the number 2 quarterback.
Definitely. And to your other question, Jim, before we move on here, are players at Big Cat, is a guy like Walker White going to be at Big Cat? Yeah, they help out for sure. They definitely help out.
1271. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
Hey man, it's Blake, man. I'm calling in from Macon, Georgia.
Blake,
what's going on, man?
From Macon, Georgia. What's going on, Blake?
Man, no complaints, man. Just driving in from a nice weekend with the family.
I hear you. What you got for us tonight, man?
About to call in. Man, I haven't really heard much of the call-in show. I just kind of been waiting online, but man, just as a former 5'10", 270-pound offensive lineman, I am fired up, man, about Jacobe Ward.
I like it.
Hey.
I mean, I know you looking at the rankings, man. Like a lot of people get caught up in how he's a 3-star or whatever. To me, he's a really high-end 4-star, and I'm really glad we got him.
Yeah, I agree with you, Blake. Jacobe Ward is a guy, and don't take it from me or Alan or Zach. Take it from Auburn staff. They have treated him like a number one priority for, I mean, a long time now. They identified him pretty early. Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, LSU, those were all early offers for this guy. I mean, he's already, I wouldn't say he's maxed out his frame, but he's up there. And he's not one of those guys that has to put on weight. He really probably needs to, probably 10, 15 pounds is what he'll get to.
Right.
But it doesn't, even at 340, the dude moves like a tackle.
Right.
No, it looked, and I can vouch for what Cole just said as far as the staff being fired up. I mean, he was, and I don't think I realized this when his recruitment first started, how they prioritized him. But some of the information that I got recently was he was the number one interior player on the board, period. That was their guy that they had earmarked. And realistically, I know what his ranking is, but in this offense and an RPO, vertical shot offense that wants to have a downhill running game, right? Like if you want to run inside zone, if you want to run counter, if you want to run duo, you have to have people movers like him that are also athletic enough to be able to climb to the second level and block in space. And he's able to do all of that. And so he's just a perfect match for what they want to do. And I agree that it's the fit and then his athletic skill set. You just don't see a lot of guys that are 350 plus that can move the way he can. And so he's a huge pickup for us, regardless of ranking.
Yeah. He is, man. And I'm not going to take up too much of y'all time, man. My question, man, was the line class is really starting to stack up. I mean, it's pretty much filled out. I mean, with Babalola at this point, would he kind of be a luxury? I mean, I see you got Tavares Dice and Broderick Shaw committed. They just kind of – I know we're still recruiting them, but at this point, is it a luxury to get him, or is it still like an absolute need for the class?
Need. It's kind of on the line, right?
It's in between, right? Like I think you filled your needs of what you had to have. You've got 2 tackles, you've got 2 interior players. That's what you had to walk away with in this class, and not just 2 tackles and 2 interior offensive line targets, but guys that you prioritized. So you got early offers, early evaluations, guys you wanted. But I think because of the lack of success of high school offensive line recruiting for previous years, you still have some needs for upgrade in talent, right? And that's where Andrew Babalola and Malachi Goodman fall into place, because these are guys that can come in. I think you've recruited some versatile offensive linemen in this class, some guys that can be multi-positional players for you. So if you bring in a Babalola, there's probably somebody in that group that could slide inside the guard. If you were to bring in Malachi Goodman, he could start at tackle and maybe move inside the guard. So 2 guys that are extremely talented that I think could fill various needs for you. And again, because of previous misses in previous classes before the Hugh Freeze era, I think that from a need standpoint, or I guess a need of accruing additional talent, it's there from that standpoint. But from a depth of your class standpoint, I think you've already hit all those needs.
I'll tell you what it does is it makes your life a lot easier, Blake. If you get Andrew Babalola, your life becomes so much easier when it comes to transfer portal time.
Okay. I figured, man. He's got a nice frame, man. I haven't seen much of his film or anything, but just seeing pictures of him on Twitter, man, he seems like a pretty big kid. Yeah,
he is. He's a big kid, and he's got a lot of room to fill out, and that's exactly what you're looking for with, feet like a tight end. I mean, his athleticism. Between him and Broderick Shaw, I mean, those 2 guys, elite athletes. And I'm not just talking for offensive linemen. They're just athletes, bottom line.
And Tavares Dice is no slouch. And that's the thing, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
Right. Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I appreciate y'all, man, answering my question, man. And I'm not on the corner, man, but I hear a lot of great things about y'all over there, man. So just thank y'all for putting out the coverage, man. I love getting a chance to read some of the free stories sometimes about the kids, man. So what was the question of the week?
Oh, yeah. All right. You using a spoon or a knife, Blake? Let us know.
With mayonnaise, if you're spreading something on some bread, you gonna use a spoon or a knife?
I'm a whatever I grab first, guys.
Okay.
But if I had to come down to it, I would say the spoon, man.
Okay. Blake said I'm a survivalist.
See, because when I said this to my wife and her family, and by the way, she texted me, she was like, listen, we don't do it for butter. Don't make us look like psychos, okay? we use a knife for butter, a butter knife, like it's named appropriately.
Yeah, for sure.
But they look at me like I'm crazy, like, you don't use a spoon, you know? I'm like, well, I do now, but I'd never thought about it before. I guess it makes sense. But I like
man, you got that peanut butter, man, and you get it, you put a lot. I don't know about y'all, but I like a lot of peanut butter on my PB&Js, man. So
I do too.
There's always a little bit left in the spoon, that's a little chef's treat,
I hear you on that one, Blake.
Spoken like a true offensive lineman, Blake.
Yeah, man.
for sure, man. Hey, man, talking to y'all fellas, man, and keep doing what y'all doing, man. Have a blessed night.
Hey, you too, Blake. Call in again.
Great call, Blake. Hey, what do y'all think about on the interior? Your two guards are Jacobe Ward and DeAndre Carter.
That's a lot of man inside, buddy.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of man right there.
That's 2 340, 350 pluses right there.
And potentially Ty Buster at center.
Yeah, Ty Buster. Or if Connor Lou's still around. Yeah. You got Kel Ellis will be coming in at some point.
Kel Ellis.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm telling you, man, when I was doing the position unit rankings, I kept going, all right, if I put offensive line first, I'm going to catch a lot of flack for that.
Right.
But when you really look at the job they've done building that room, I mean, it's layered. They got options. They've got good players. They've got starters. They got NFL type guys in that room. It's the best I've seen Auburn's offensive line room in a minute. It really is.
No, I mean, I'm with you. And realistically, you mentioned one of them, but the tackle we took out of high school last year, I mean, he's no slouch. Favorite Edwin?
I know. Favorite
I mean, look, if you talk about frame, athleticism, size, now he's raw. Don't get me wrong. He's sure. Still learning the position, right? But the good thing about a kid like him is there's no bad habits either because he is so raw. So when you're a fundamentals guy like Jake, when you're a teacher the way that he is, you almost love having kids like that. So I'm with you, Cole. TJ Johnson, just another kid with an outstanding frame.
You know who never even gets mentioned is Jaden Muskrat. And he was hurt a little bit during the spring, but when he gets back healthy, this guy was a starter for Tulsa. A starter.
Correct.
And you also got a starter from Akron, Ronan Chambers, as depth.
That's going to be interesting to me, who the right tackle is next year. Jaden Muskrat backed up at right tackle last year. Do they try to slide him inside to that left guard spot? Do they slide Ronan Chambers inside to guard and let Muskrat continue to battle at tackle? That's going to be very interesting to me to see how that one plays out.
For sure. Blake, that was awesome, man. I always appreciate good offensive line talk. We could do that whole show on that.
5013. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, how about you? Don from Birmingham.
Oh, Don. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Cole, but I got to tell you, you cracked me up the other night when you were laughing about Twin Peaks, man. That was good.
Well, Don, I know. Look, I can relate to you on that because I have been joked on by several things, and I probably deserved it 10 times out of 10. But the guy had a good one, and I was like, yeah, I had to mention that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really bother me, and it's kind of turned into my trademark now in the corner. Some people get mad at me when I don't mention Twin Peaks, and some people say they call me Donnie. One guy calls me Donnie on there. I said, Donnie, we've had enough of Twin Peaks, okay? But you're gonna make some people happy with it, and some people not, guys.
I'm
That's
with
right.
you. Hey, look, Don, as long as you're on brand, Don, that's all that matters, right? Like find your thing and stick with it.
That's right.
Well, that's right. But anyway, guys, when the last caller was talking about the offensive line, but I want to ask you guys about the other side. And Keith Jackson made the term famous, the big uglies, and let's talk a little defensive line recruiting. How are we looking there? I know Jared Smith's a possibility, and who else are possibilities, guys?
Well, we haven't talked much about him, but Nate Marshall is a guy that I think we need to continue to keep an eye on. We'll have a pretty good idea of what Nate Marshall's going to do. And for those who don't know, Nate Marshall is a 4-star, kind of fringe 5-star. He's in the top 50 overall in the country. Yep. Defensive line, defensive end, edge type guy who's committed to Michigan right now. He came down for an official visit almost out of nowhere and said it's down to Auburn and Michigan. Going to maybe try to come back for Big Cat Weekend, but Michigan also has a big cookout or whatever they do on the same weekend. So where he ends up, that might be the decision. That might be where he decides to go. So we'll be watching him.
Xavion Hardy is a guy I'm paying attention to, specifically at the defensive end spot. And then on the Buck spot, I'm still not giving up on Herbert Scroggins. Like I think that's
I wouldn't either.
There's meat on that bone, as my granddad used to say, man. So they're going to continue to go back on that one. And then obviously I think the board will continue to probably expand a little. They'll keep their eye open. And then who knows what opportunities are going to come around. Look, NIL is a funny thing sometimes. Winning programs are sometimes a funny thing. Let Auburn get off to a 5-0 start and see what, when coaches call certain prospects who may not necessarily have been as receptive before. Well, maybe they're taking your phone call a little bit more now, right? So as the season continues to progress, I mean, think about Amar Sweeps this time last year. He wasn't even on our radar, right? Now, he was a guy that was on Auburn's radar, but he wasn't somebody who had visited campus or somebody that we were necessarily cognizant of. So as the season continues on, more targets will become clear to us, but those are the ones I think that are worth paying attention to right now, in my honest opinion.
Well, real quick, man. I know there's a lot of people on the board who have not been happy, going back to last week. A lot of people happy this week. To keep the good vibes going, man, if you want to make a real difference for all the Auburn student athletes, join On to Victory. For as little as only $17 a month, you can support Auburn athletics, enjoy awesome perks like monthly giveaways, VIP events, behind-the-scenes content, and cash back on your favorite brands. Plus, you get exclusive savings on to Victory gear. Head over to ontovictory.co. That's .co, not .com. And join today. Support all the amazing Auburn athletes and get in on these even better benefits. Back to the call lines now. We got a good caller here. We got Anthony from Anthony, right. You're live.
Fellas, that's from Montgomery.
What's going on, Anthony? Did Blake fire you up talking about the offensive line, man, and then Don defensive line?
Hey, you know my question don't have nothing to do with recruiting. We talking ball.
I like it, Anthony. And you talk about being on brand. If Anthony doesn't come in, fellas, then something is definitely wrong. My man's got to be sick or on his deathbed or something.
I know it.
So each of you guys, give me one offensive player, one defensive player that needs to have a great fall count. They need to be buzzing on each side of the ball heading into week 1.
Okay.
I got mine. If you guys need a minute to think.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Zach.
I got mine if y'all want to hear mine first.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I want to get yours, Anthony.
My offensive guy is Lambert Smith.
Mm-hmm.
He got to come in and prove he was worth that bag that he got.
Okay.
I hear you.
I know everybody gonna talk about Perry Thompson because he's there and Cam Coleman, but we need to be when y'all go to those practices, we need to be seeing reports of he who we thought he was. That's on offense. And on defense, I'm kind of between Falk because we need him to take that step, and whoever gonna play that third corner between Antonio Kite, Crawford, or J.C. Hart. One of those guys need to be buzzing because with the news of Tyler Scott, I'm kind of worried about that first corner off the bench. I mean, I'm good with Lee and Scott, but that third corner concerns me. So somebody needs to step up early in fall so they can get as many reps as they can.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. That was Antonio Kite was mine on defense. It absolutely has to step forward, in my opinion. I think he's the guy with the best skill set to do it. And you have to have three corners. And I don't think Auburn's fan base, Anthony, you're an informed fan and you watch a lot of football. I don't think the Auburn fan base necessarily realizes what all they lost in the secondary and how good DJ James was and how good Nehemiah Pritchett were. I mean, those are NFL guys, right?
Yep.
So not having those guys on the outside with a K and Lee waiting in the wings, and now you've rotated that a good bit, what's going to happen there? But for my offensive player, it's Jarquez Hunter. He has got to come out of the gate hot. If Auburn is going to be able to take vertical shots down the field, you have to have that play action game in place there, in my opinion. You have to have a running back that's capable of taking advantage of a light box. And if Jarquez starts out slow like he did last year, it's really going to hinder Auburn, specifically in that Cal game. And that's one you cannot afford to drop, period.
Okay. Zach, who's your offensive guy?
Camden Brown.
You got mine. I wrote it down. That's mine too.
That's the one because I get it. I'm not going to say. I'm going to say this. I get the hype. Yes, Cam Coleman is going to be. Looks like he's going to be amazing. Perry Thompson with the hype. The recipe for success in the SEC is not to have 4 true freshmen starting wide receivers leading your team. That is a recipe for a letdown, regardless of how talented they are.
Yes,
that's true.
You have to have somebody who's mature, has played in the SEC, step up in that wide receiving room, or you start looking behind those freshmen. There's a lot of failed expectations in that room right now when you start looking around. So I'm looking for Camden Brown. Anybody who's experienced that wide receiving room, they got to prove themselves. Because right now, no one's talking about them. Because if they roll Camden Brown out there day one, there's going to be fans like, why isn't Cam Coleman there? Why isn't Perry Thompson there? Why put Bryce Kane in there? Put Malcolm Simmons in there. Like, they're going to name all these freshmen before them. So I think Camden Brown needs to have a huge chip on his shoulder this spring.
Well, I totally agree. Camden Brown's who I wrote down almost immediately after Anthony asked the question. And the reason is I understand Keandre Lambert-Smith. That makes sense to me, especially when you look at the NIL and probably what you had to do to get him, because it seemed like he was slipping away. I know Auburn had to do what they had to do to get him. And if that doesn't come through and prove to be worth it, when it comes to good and bad investments, that's definitely something you're looking at.
Sure.
I personally think Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to be a good investment. I think he's pretty proven. And Cam Coleman's not proven, but we know what he is. Okay. So I feel pretty good about those two pieces in the receiver room. Now, when we talk about ceiling and floor, if Camden Brown is able to come on and be what he looked like he's going to be in the spring, and he continues to have that same fall camp practice, and he does well, and he's got the buzz, how much better is Auburn's receiver room going to be?
I mean, if he's your fourth guy and he's, putting up 300 yards or something like that, and you can – here's the thing. Cam Coleman and, Lambert-Smith aren't going to be able to play 70 snaps, right?
Right.
You have to have some rotation there. Otherwise, they're going to be dogging it on routes at certain times. They're going to be doing what Tennessee does, where they're like running the fake route, and they're running the fake route, and you don't even care. They're just standing there.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But you have to have a bigger-bodied outside option that's able to step up. I mean, I think they've got a couple different options in the slot that they feel comfortable with. But having 2 guys, or at least 4 guys on the outside where you can get some rotation there is going to be pivotal for this team.
Definitely. Can you imagine the red zone threats you would have if Camden Brown emerged with Camden Brown, Cam Coleman, and then you got Rivaldo Fairweather you could throw out there at 6'5"?
We were talking about Jeffrey living his best life earlier. Peyton Thorne and Hugh Freeze are going to be living their best life if that becomes a reality. That's for certain.
And don't let Perry Thompson come on.
No.
6'3", 220 out there. So
I mean, looking like a weak side linebacker.
yeah, right. It's funny. I was talking to somebody when I was up there during OV season, and Perry Thompson, when he first got there, I think he was, for those who don't know, when you arrive as a freshman, you got to go through like a whole day that's like that's all about physicals, and then you got to sign all these papers before you can ever do anything. That's just part of arriving at a college.
Sure.
You have to redo it every year too. Each player does. Anyway, we always called it NCAA Day. That's what we call it.
Yes.
Because you have to sign every paper and waiver and all that with the NCAA, which is I won't get into that. But anyway, I talked to a coach who saw Perry Thompson standing there at a workout watching, like his first day that he was there, and he starts looking at his phone, going, What? Did I get an edge recruit here today? Is this what's going on here? He walks up to him. Oh, it's just Perry. Like, well, he looks like a 5-star edge. That's crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, they just don't, physically speaking. We'll see what his game's like from a technical standpoint, because I think that's going to be the biggest adjustment for Perry. It's not going to be physical, right? It's all going to be mental. Getting off the jam, stemming routes, understanding the route tree, being able to get in and out of your breaks, all the things, the nuances of playing wide receiver, right? Like that's going to be it for Perry. But the physical aspect of it, put him in a one-on-one with a back shoulder where he's just out there naturally making plays. And that's probably, in my honest opinion, what they're going to do with him. So I think they're going to scale back what they ask from him, and they're going to put him in situationally where they know they can take advantage.
Who's y'all's pick on defense? Did we say that already?
For me, yes.
Say Kite.
Yeah, right? It's Antonio Kite for me, because I think he's I think he's got to be the guy as the third corner. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's one of the other guys that can take a step forward there. I know they were very impressed with the freshman, and that's somebody that Cole's been high on since his recruitment. But
yeah, Jay Crawford.
Jay Crawford. I just think with his exposure to what the scheme he was coming out of from Alabama is very similar to what DJ Durkin wants to do in the back end. He's also a guy that was coached by Charles Kelly, so there's some familiarity there. Even though Charles is with the safeties and the nickels and crimes on the outside, I think his understanding of what's being asked from the defensive secondary, it's just time for him, right? More so than the other guys, it's time for him to kind of take a step forward and be athletically what he looks like on the field. And maybe even he's good enough to be the second corner, and you can move a guy. I think that we all think in Keontae Scott's better at nickel, right? Like I think Keontae's going to get a shot on the outside for sure.
Well, that would be my pick, by the way.
Right. So Keontae Scott moving inside to nickel, I think makes that defense a worlds better. I honestly do. If you got somebody that can step up on the outside there,
I do too. Which is why Keontae Scott is my pick, and he may prove us wrong. He may be a better corner than we expect.
Sure.
He got thrown into the fire. A lot of people point to the bowl game and say, well, he got beat on this play and he just didn't look natural. Well, I think Jalen Simpson was I think we interviewed him before they left for the bowl game. And he's like, somebody asked the question, how's Keontae doing at corner? He goes, oh, he's playing corner. I don't know that. Like what? So he just got thrown into the fire, guys. I would not put much into that. I think he's going to be much better when they get to it. And I hate to I'm always careful about how I do this with certain guys and how I word things, because I personally do believe in the rat poison thing that Nick Saban said one time about the media. I believe that is a true thing, even though I'm a part of the media. I don't care. I think it's true. I think media can really put that on you, and I don't like it. So I try not to be that guy. But with Keontae Scott, I do see a lot of weight on his shoulders on this team.
Sure.
More than I would, want for him. like you said, you're having to replace NFL DBs, the entire secondary, by the way, not just corner. And you were playing nickel, and that's really where your skill set fits the most. Now, if he is able to go to corner and produce and be a guy that can stay in coverage out there, play in the field, do all this stuff, he's going to be an early draft guy.
Yeah, he's just made himself a lot of money, right? Because you're talking about a guy 100% in the NFL. And for those that don't know it, you're talking about playing with a 53-man roster. So positional versatility is a premium in the NFL. And if you have a proven guy that can play outside and inside, you 100% moved up somebody's draft board. You are now a top 3 round pick, excuse me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to potentially being, a third day type guy.
Right. Definitely.
1737. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello. What's going on?
Hey, this is Hayden from Tallahassee, Florida.
What's up, Hayden?
Not much. I was just wondering if you had to bet on it today, who would round out the offensive side of the class at running back 2, wide receiver, and quarterback? Thank you.
Okay.
I love a man that's short, sweet, and to the point. I like it, Hayden.
Good. Running back 2. I like how he put emphasis on that because Alvin Henderson's in the class. So it's two running backs, definitely getting one more. I don't know if 3. We've talked about 3, maybe a possibility, but I think 2. It's going to be 2.
I think it's going to be 2.
So he said running back 2, receiver, and tight end, right?
Yes. Was it tight end? Was that the third one?
No,
maybe not.
I thought it was running back, quarterback, and wide receiver.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, quarterback. Okay. Gotcha. Well, Usman Chroma is who I'm looking at right now for the other running back spot.
I am still going with DeJuan Morris. I think that's who's most likely, in my opinion. Even though I know that Auburn would prefer a bigger back, I'm a little wary with Chroma, right? Because the Georgia part of it gives me a little bit of pause. Definitely. It's not that Auburn's not done a fantastic job recruiting him. It's not that Auburn hasn't put an emphasis on him and that he is very interested. All those things are true, right? Yes. But I'm just very wary of the in-state school and how much they press down the stretch. And because of the relationship that the running back coach there has, for those that don't know, I believe it's I'll think of the guy's name here in just a second, but the running back coach at Georgia also coached Chroma's brother, I believe. So there's a relationship there with the family. Yes.
Josh Crawford.
That's right. Josh Crawford. He coached Chroma's brother. So there's a relationship there with the family. How much do they trust him and trust Georgia more so than Auburn as it pertains to his future? You just don't know these things, right? And Chroma's not a kid, in my opinion, that's motivated by money. This situation, he's going to pick the best fit for him. So I don't know. And I think with Morris, there's a clear opportunity for him to come in and for his skill set. I think Freeze can sell him on some of the things with some of the players that he's coached on the past about how he could utilize him in multiple roles. And so I see that pitch there with him. But I think that's probably your guy there, number 2. But look, if you can land Chroma, dude, that's the best running back class Auburn's landed in a minute.
It definitely is. When was the last time Auburn got 2 running backs?
The year they got Tank and Mark Anthony Richards, I think.
Wow.
Which was, I
forgot all about Mark Anthony Richards.
Yeah. And he was a fantastic high school running back. It's a shame that his knee gave him the problems that it did. He just never materialized into probably what he could have been.
Right. You can make the argument that he was not just a smooth running back transition. He was an offensive athlete. So it was, Gus Malzahn, he would get guys like that. He wanted gadget players. He wanted, you fit in this specific role that I have in my offense that nobody else has, that kind of thing.
Right.
He was definitely one of those guys, I thought. So
it was like who was the taller running back that ended up going? I think he went to Michigan State.
Harold Joyner.
Yeah.
Oh, they got 3 in that class, didn't they?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they got the kid that transferred out to Memphis.
Was Shivers in that class? Oh, Asa Martin.
Asa Martin. Then they got Harold Joyner. And who was the other? Was it
What
Was it
year
Sean
was
Shivers?
that class?
Was it Sean Shivers? Oh, man, was that like 18?
I'm looking up the classes right now.
If it was Sean Shivers.
Yeah, it was Asa Martin, Harold Joyner, and hang on, I'm scrolling here. And Sean Shivers was in that class.
Yep. Three 4-star running backs in that class.
Sean Shivers committed really early.
He did.
when he was like going into his junior year. And
Sean,
he got totally forgotten about, but man, I love me some Sean Shivers.
I'm with you, man. And look, he was the smallest, lowest rated out of the group and ended up being the best one out of the three.
Boy, you talk about heart of a lion, son.
Yeah.
He was awesome. He was awesome. One of my favorite runs of Sean Shivers was when he broke off a run against Alabama and he got called back for a hold on Sal Canella. And I think it was maybe, I don't know, Deontay Thompson, one of those really good safeties for Alabama, had an angle on him and he made a cut, got by him and kept running. I was like, that was a good tone setter for that game, I remember.
Look, and I'm not one of these kind of guys that jobs the refs, and they have an extremely difficult job. Extremely difficult. But that was the most phantom hold call I have ever seen in my entire life.
He made up for it though on that jet sweep he had in 2019 where he took Kenny's head off.
Yeah, he took his soul and went on into the end zone with his face mask.
Yeah.
That was the best celebration of all time. You could just tell the adrenaline was just too much. He didn't even know how to celebrate.
Yeah, he's like, did I just do that? I did.
Yep.
That was awesome.
That's legendary. Yeah. We got 2 callers left here. 2822. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Cole from Knoxville.
What's up, Cole? Good name.
Yeah. With all the running back talk just now on the show.
Yep.
There's a kid, the Morris kid that plays at Oakland out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Yes.
We should, if we get that kid, we should not feel too bad. I've watched that kid play multiple times deep in the playoffs. He's a really underrated player in my personal opinion. I travel around and watch a lot of high school ball, and he's one of the best. He's one of the best running backs I've seen in the last 5 years, and I think he's a stud, and we would be gifted to get him. It would be a gift to us. So, just a couple questions. I'll let you guys talk. I'll get off here. The first question is, what sets this Auburn staff apart when they recruit other than NIL? I know a lot of the way that the world of recruiting is right now is, I mean, it's essentially pay for play. But when it doesn't come down to when, say, each school has a similar offer, what do you think sets this staff apart? And then on the inside defensive line this year, who is a breakout guy that we're going to see that maybe it's kind of like a Marcus Harris? When he's in the game, you feel pretty good against the run. When he's not in the game, you kind of feel iffy. Who do you think that interior defensive lineman will be? The reason I asked this question, Alan brought up a pretty good point. I think it was on maybe the Tuesday show, last Tuesday or this Tuesday, where he talked about the importance of having like good interior defensive line because of the way that college football has changed in the RPO games, where they get the ball out quick. Who do we think that guy is for Auburn this year? You guys have a good night. War Eagle.
Good stuff, Cole. Good questions.
Yeah, great questions.
I wrote down the first two. Did y'all get the last one?
I did. Who's the interior offensive lineman? Interior defensive lineman that is going to be kind of the bell cow there. Obviously, we lost our most productive player last year. Who's the guy that's going to be able to create havoc on the inside?
Let's answer that one first. Who do y'all think that would be? I have someone in mind right now.
I think it's got to be Philip Bleedy, honestly. at that. He's going to be at that playmaker 3-tech spot. They're going to kind of use him in some different placement. Also 4-eye, maybe even slide him out or slide him inside. I think if you go with a lighter defensive line, a rabbits package of sorts, you could put him up over the nose to try to increase pass rush. I think he's got that kind of a skill set and did a little bit of that last year for Indiana when I popped on his film. So he's probably the guy for me. I haven't seen him put it together from a pass rush standpoint yet the way that I need to. And I think that's the biggest thing with his game. How much does that translate? And he was asked to be more of a plugger last year.
Yeah.
So what's asked of him in this scheme? Does what DJ do with the front and how they utilize him, does that open him up somewhat by having some other bigger bodies next to him to kind of take on some of those doubles? So that'll be the interesting part to me.
Zach, who do you think it might be?
Yeah, mine was Bleedy too.
Bleedy?
I think coming into this system that's a little bit more aggressive, I think he's also surrounded by better talent than he was at Indiana, personally, especially on the defensive line. I think an honorable mention could be Rakes just because of his experience in the system. I think he's someone who could fit in multiple roles along that defensive line, but I think it has to be one of them, right? Because you don't bring in two guys with that much experience for them to sit on the bench and not be top contributors. So one of those guys has to emerge as the guy on the interior.
I personally think that Isaiah Rakes is one of the most. He's not my pick. I think he is one of the most. How do I word this? I think he's close to a sure thing. I don't want to call him a sure thing, but I think he's the one that I feel the best about of all the transfers.
Sure.
He's going to be good for Auburn's defense. Now, he's not going to fill up the stat sheet. I don't expect that.
No.
But what he does is control the doubles. He controls he makes you stop running inside zone. You go, well, okay, that guy's in there. We got to do something else.
Right.
And that's exactly what Auburn's been missing for a while now. Now, I hope it's because I've put a lot into this guy, and I loved him in high school. I thought he was fantastic. And he just doesn't get talked about right now, and he's falling down the depth chart a little bit. I hope Deron Reed.
Okay.
I hope he does. I really do. But I'll add one more element to this. I think my actual pick is going to be Gage Keys. I have a player that I talk to a lot who will give me the rundown of the guys on the team, what he thinks. And out of nowhere the other day, he said, that boy Gage is a dog.
Okay.
Gage Keys, he said, now he's a good pass rusher, is what the guy told me, which
I believe it
impressed some people and was a little bit shocking. I've just heard good things about Gage Keys. I liked what I saw on his tape from Kansas. I thought it was pretty good. I think there's some things he needs to work on if he's going to be a true interior guy, but as a 3 technique, he's going to be pretty good, I think. So he would be my pick for breakout interior defensive lineman.
I like it.
The other question from Cole was, what sets Auburn's staff apart aside from NIL? When all the NIL offers are the same, everybody's offering the same thing for this guy. What is it about Auburn's staff that sets them apart?
I had an interesting conversation the other day with somebody, and I was kind of I was asking around about this. And the response I got back was, the investment in time that they put into recruiting and building genuine relationships. And a lot of staffs will say that. A lot of people will say that. But with this staff, I believe it to be true. And I think something that's intertwined into that is the culture that they're building inside the building, right? Like, I think that is kind of contagious to kids when they bring them on visits. They kind of feel that culture. And let's kind of break that down a little bit further, because everybody says culture, right? Like, anytime you have a podcast like this for any network, or anytime that, you hear just a coach randomly talk and they talk about culture, well, what is that? To a lot of people, it's accountability, right? To other people, it's just kind of the standard that you're operating at every day. And the unique thing that I got from this conversation is the culture of vulnerability, where there's transparency in the building, and you have a head coach that's willing to talk to you about the low moments of his life and to build that trust and say, it's going to be okay, guys, because you're going to go through ups and downs. So I found that to be really unique because there's an openness and an honesty that are existing inside the building that you just don't see a lot of places. And you don't have a lot of head coaches that are willing to give you part of their story year in and year out and willing to teach lessons. And so I think that's the unique part about this. And I think that's an attractive component that kind of separates this staff from other staffs, in my opinion, as it pertains to relationship building.
I totally agree with that. And to add to that, one thing about this staff, and I haven't been covering this as long as Jeffrey has, but I've always followed it. I've been around it, paid attention. I think at least what sets this staff apart from other staffs that I've seen at Auburn is they don't get surprised very often. They don't leave any stones unturned. And I think previous staffs at Auburn have done that before. So what I mean by that is they cover every single base. And if they ever feel like a kid is telling them what they want to hear, but is maybe trending away from them, they aren't shocked by that. They then know what to do in that situation. And I think that is the biggest thing for me. I see that a lot. I see that a lot where they may be hearing something about a kid that they feel pretty good about, and then all of a sudden I get a totally different, hey, this is actually not going our way, or hey, it is going our way, despite what everyone else seems to be thinking. They know what's going on. They have a great understanding of every little nuance that happens in every recruitment.
Four 003. You're live. Who we talking to? Where are you calling from?
Gentlemen, it's Carter Malden. How the hell are you?
What's up, Bammer lover? Yeah, I know, man.
The Bammer lover is here. I wanted to run a few things by y'all. So if we get Juju Lewis, all cards on the table, do you think that we will have a better chance of snagging Cunningham or Derek Nix? And do you think that we will go after another receiver if we were to get one of those? And on top of that, what do you guys see? I know early on y'all had your doubts about Jared Smith, and now the staff has really ramped it up with him. What do you think they're seeing in him that maybe has changed, other than getting to see him firsthand in person when they went to visit him at his school?
Okay. Appreciate it, Carter. So he's basically asking if Auburn were to get Juju Lewis.
Yep.
Does that help you with receivers like Caleb Cunningham, Derek Smith? Yes.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an easy one, Carter. They definitely will take notice if Auburn were to get a guy like Julian Lewis. And look, even if they got a guy like KJ Lacey, they still would. I think what a lot of receivers are doing right now, they hear what Freeze and his staff are saying to them. They believe it because they wouldn't be considering Auburn this heavily if they didn't, because Auburn does not have a quarterback committed for this class.
Right.
And I think that is putting a big damper on receiver recruiting. So the fact that they're still in it is a big deal to me with guys like Caleb Cunningham, Derek Smith, even maybe Travis Smith to some extent. The point is that they are in it with those guys because they have proven we can get guys like you, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Kane. They have to show it on the field, number one, that they can handle a receiver of that caliber. And number two, they got to get a quarterback in the class, and I think that will really set it off.
I don't disagree with you, Colin. One other name that I'm paying attention to that I'm really going to kind of watch the evaluation on is Sam Turner, current Georgia Tech commitment, recent offer by Auburn. He's a guy, whether it's, if it's Juju, obviously Turner's out of Atlanta, out of the DeKalb area, I believe. So somebody that Juju would probably know and or have influence with. And then KJ Lacey, you're right. Look, having a quarterback in your class that also can function as a peer recruiter and talk to receivers and say, hey, I'm going to get you the ball, I promise.
Yeah.
It just carries weight, right, Cole? You know what I mean? It's not just like we're not just telling you anymore that we're going to get you a quarterback. We've got you a quarterback now. And not only do we have you a quarterback, he can talk to you and tell you about how, we're going to feature the passing game. So it's just so many different layers to not having that element right now recruiting for you. And so I think once they get that established, that who they are able to get in with on the wide receiver board will change somewhat.
Sure. And then Carter's last question was about Jared Smith, which I think we've had a similar question to this. Basically, what was it that the staff made the staff go, wow, we need to really get in the game with this guy? What do you think it was?
That he's a multi-dimensional player or multi-positional player in that he could play. He can grow into a 5 tech for you. Whereas before, I think that my thought process was with what I've seen on tape of him, which is very little, right? Like he does not have a lot of highlights out there. But what I have seen, I thought he was more of a 5 tech. But what Josh Aldridge has seen and what DJ Durkin has seen is somebody that's capable of playing the buck. And so when you have somebody that can play 2 spots for you, that's always going to up your stock as it pertains to a recruiting board. And in addition to that, I think we talked about this before, but you're talking about a kid that transferred mid-year in high school. So having a conversation with him about what occurred there, getting a feel from his current high school football coach of what kind of kid he is, being able to see him in person because he did get limited snaps last year, transferring from Spain Park over to Thompson. So I think this is kind of an ongoing evaluation with him, even though he's got some great sophomore clips. You always want to see how a kid progresses year over year, right? Before you go head over heels, like, hey, this is the guy. And I think they've seen enough to this point now to say, okay, we really like this kid. We're going to amp things up here. This is going to be a guy that we're really going to heavily pursue.
Yeah.
Last call of the night, 4741. You're live. Who are we talking to? Where are you calling from?
This is Sam 11 from Waynesboro, Mississippi. Been a while, guys. How are y'all doing?
What's going on there, Sam 11?
I just kind of wanted to share some thoughts and maybe pose a question at the end. I've kind of been thinking a lot about this. I guess it's been kind of quiet on the Auburn end for the past. Well, obviously we landed Jacobe Ward and Hollis Davidson, but kind of looking at the month that some other teams had in June and 1st of July, kind of where this class stands as of today, I think it's good. And I don't say this lightly, but I'm starting to feel like Juju Lewis is kind of more of a must get for this class to take it to where we want to go. I've really been looking at the On3 industry rankings and kind of, stacked at the top. A lot of these teams, a lot of them we play, obviously Bama, Georgia, LSU, have multiple 5 stars, Oregon and Ohio State as well. Kind of in this new day of college football with Texas and Oklahoma, where do you feel like we need to be competitive? Because, right now I think we're 12th, which is 7th or 8th in the SEC, and, have a few teams just right behind us. So it feels like the pressure is higher than ever to sign the top talent to be competitive in our league. But just want to hear your thoughts, and y'all have a great night.
Appreciate you, Sam 11. That's a good one to end the show on, I think. I think at the end of the day, Julian Lewis I think that was a good point, Sam. He is a piece that can really, and I said it with the receivers, set off this class.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, I don't know what Auburn was ranked in July last year, but it was Perry Thompson and DeMarcus Riddick who committed in July. It was those pieces, and then it was snowballing after that.
Right. I think in the 30s, I think, Cole, because we were just coming off. Obviously, we just this time last year missed on Cam Coleman because he committed to A&M on the 4th. DJ Barber committed to Auburn, and I think we had like 8 commits, and we're somewhere at the back half of the top 40. I think is where we were. And then, like you said, we went on a roll there where we landed a couple of guys in a row. And so then it really kind of started to pick up from there.
Right. I don't know. Was it you that said this, Alan? Somebody said this. I can't remember, but it was, don't pay too much attention to what the rivals are bringing in. it's important to know what they're bringing in, but it's a lot more important to know what Auburn's bringing in.
Yeah.
All right. And if you follow us and we keep you informed on everything, we're not going to tell you if a guy's a top target and he's not. If Auburn had to go below some others to get somebody, we would tell you. So far, I hadn't seen that happen very much. Even a guy like Jacobe Ward, he was on the top of the list, and he has been for a long time. All right. Hollis Davidson. Auburn did not want to lose him. They wanted him in the class, and they made sure to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it comes down to evaluations because those guys are obviously ranked as 3-star recruits. So you have to see if Auburn's evaluations are going to be right. The staff's going to live and die by it, and I respect them for that. That's good. They know what the circumstances are. They know who they're going up against. It's not like like I said a minute ago, they have a very, very high awareness. They know who can compete. They know who can do it. And they're still shooting for the stars for guys like Andrew Babalola, Julian Lewis, and very well could hit on those guys. I'm telling you that they're not out of it with either one of those guys or some of the other big ones that are on there. And even the guys that are committed elsewhere, they're going to have a shot with those guys in the end. Now, one thing I like that this staff does is they have a board and they stick to it. No matter what. Oh, you committed somewhere? Who cares? You're my number one guy.
Agreed. They do not fold and give in. To answer the specific question about where does your class rank need to be for you to be competitive, I don't get into that so much. I look more at impact players, right? And to me, you need to land 8 to 10 top 200 type players each and every year. Those are your impact guys. And if you're doing that over a 4-year period, well, half of the composition of your roster are top 200 players in the country. And then, like Cole talked about, you got to be nails on your evaluations when you're bringing in 3-star guys. They need to be guys that have that NFL upside, and those traits are, tangible traits that transition to what it is that you're trying to accentuate in your scheme. And then obviously beyond that, you mitigate your weakness through the transfer portal. So it's a layered process there of all 3 facets that you have to hit. But to me, class ranking is irrelevant. Are you getting 8 to 10 impact players every cycle? How are you doing in the transfer portal? And then your evaluation. And that'll be proof of concept over time, right? Like if we see some of these guys that they brought in, a Jacobe takes off, and he becomes like multi-year starter for you, 100%, like you're seeing the fruit of that evaluation pay itself off. So then it kind of gives you something to lean on as far as that's concerned. But that's kind of my answer, Sam. I know that may feel like a non-answer to you, but it's really not, because if you're getting that 8 to 10, my guess is you're going to be coming in somewhere around the top 10. And then really probably the biggest piece of that is how are you doing with quarterback recruiting? Because if you're getting an impact player at quarterback, that's like landing 5 5-stars sometimes, man. Yeah. I mean, if you're getting a Trevor Lawrence, okay, like you're going to be in a lot of football games you wouldn't have been in otherwise.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's be honest. The biggest thing is to sign up for OTV. Only $17 a month, guys. You can support Auburn athletics and enjoy a bunch of awesome perks, monthly giveaways, VIP events, behind-the-scenes content, and cash back on your favorite brands, plus exclusive savings on to Victory gear. Head over to ontovictory.co. That's .co, not .com. Join today. Support the athletes. That way, Auburn, like we've all talked about, can have another top 10 class.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, that'll do it for us tonight. We did it again, 3-man team without Jeffrey, but we get to have him back, and I think we're all excited about that.
Yeah,
it will make our lives a lot easier, that's for sure. So we'll get him back, and we'll have our recruiting show. I think Jeffrey will be there for that. It should be a Wednesday morning, and then we will be back next Sunday for our live show. Had a lot of good callers tonight. I thought everybody kept it real smooth. I thought everything was great operation tonight. Being an offensive line guy, Zach, you know how it is. You like it to be that way. So Kevin from Wilmer and Wanda, they got us kicked off as usual. Bo from Moody, Hadn't heard from him in a minute. Jim from Edgewater. I think he was a first-time caller. That was a good couple questions he gave us there. I think Blake from Macon. Was he a first-time caller?
First-time caller for Blake, and that was a great one.
It was. O-line guy. He said 5'10", 280. He said, that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of guys I went up against in high school because we weren't playing the D1 guys for sure. So I like it, Blake. I like it. That's what I look like playing O-line too. Don, Anthony from Montgomery always gets us talking. Hayden from Tallahassee, Cole from Knoxville, Carter Malden, and Sam 11. Great show. I thought it was a great show. We had a lot of good topics, a lot of good discussions. Make sure, guys, $1 gets you in for 1 month with Auburn Live. Come try us out. If you're on the fence, I think that 1 month it'll really sway you. I think you'll want to stay with us. You'll enjoy the corner most of the time, and you'll definitely enjoy the content that we put out. So for Zach in the back, who stayed in the front, Alan Head, and for Jeffrey Lee, who's in another country right now, get out of that left lane. See ya.